This is the obituary for Alonzo Underhill. It was reprinted in a Streator, Illinois, newspaper, called the Free Press, and originally printed in the Tonica News, in Tonica, Illinois, originally taken from June the 8th edition in 1878. Streator and Tonica are two small towns that still exist in north-central Illinois. Mr. Underhill is interred in a small cemetery near Streator. This is the true and bizarre account of his tragic passing, at the young age of 26. The article is titled, Killed by Lightning. The original author is unknown. Some of the article contains minor edits by the webmaster, for the sake of clarity, and for ease of reading. During the storm of this past Wednesday afternoon, a deadly bolt of lightning struck the house of Alonzo Underhill, a farmer, who is the son-in-law of Mr. O.H. Head, of Streator. Mr. Underhill was living in his young family's farmhouse, located about 8 miles east of Tonica, when a massive bolt of lightning struck his home and instantly killed him and also shocked some others in the family home. Mr. Underhill was sitting with his body tipped back in a chair that leaned against the side of the room. He was seated very near a melodeon. A melodeon is named for either an accordion, or for a pipe organ. In the case of this story, it can safely be assumed that Mrs. Underhill owned a small pipe organ which she kept in the parlor, or in the common room of the homestead, to play music for family and for visiting friends. When the lightning struck the house's roof and ran down the side of the house, to where the unfortunate farmer was tipped up in a chair and touching the melodeon, it seemed to have sent an electrical charge down the wall and through the organ, and then sadly the electrical current traveled through his body. Witnesses told the tale of the afternoon's events afterward. They said that upon the awful and sudden flash of blinding light and the crackling of the lightning strike, Mr. Underhill did spring up, whirled partly around, and then fell forward and onto his knees. One hand clutched a nearby piece of furniture in a death grip, holding him upright in a macabre pose. It was in that condition that he was frozen, his young life sucked away with a stunning crash from above. Just that quickly, the light went out from his eyes and the family had lost a husband and a father. The smell of ozone filled the room, where the stunned survivors attempted to collect their wits enough to fully digest the horror of what they had just witnessed. Mr. Willie Head, the brother of Mrs. Underhill, who had been living with them there that summer, was also sitting dangerously close at the opposite end of the melodeon, but was probably not touching it. He was badly stunned, and temporarily blinded by the shock, but he recovered his wits within a few moments. He ran into the kitchen and told the hired girl who was watching the baby that Alonzo was just killed by lightning. The little child was lying on the bed in the room with the nanny, and as the girl ran into the next room, she saw the air still crackling with static electricity, with her deceased employer in his grim death pose, upon his knees. She grabbed up the little child, covering her eyes from the sight, and fled to the stable as fast as her legs could carry them. During the tragic events of the afternoon, Mrs. Underhill was away teaching children at a schoolhouse some distance away. Her brother Willie took it upon himself to start out after her to break the news. He first went to the stable for a horse, but when he got there, he found that his arms had been so paralyzed by the electrical shock that he could not find the strength to lift them in order to put a bridle on the horse. He then ran to the schoolhouse on foot, and told his sister of the tragedy, and when she returned she found her husband still knelt in the position in which Willie had first noticed him after the event, frozen and stiff upon his knees, and leaning forward, while grasping a nearby bedstead. Upon the sad task of preparing Mr. Underhill for his final rest, it was noted that the bolt of lightning seemed to have struck him just behind his right ear upon entering into his body, and then passing down over his chest, burning a path straight through his flesh that was an inch or two wide. It extended down the torso and to about the area of the groin, where the deadly bolt had exited the body. It is a sad case, and the young widow of Alonzo Underhill is left grief-stricken and desolate, and the little child is left fatherless. They have the deepest sympathy of the people of this community. The funeral of young Mr. Underhill took place yesterday on June the 7th at 10 o'clock in the morning, with the remains being interred in the Brock Cemetery. His stone was inscribed A.S. Underhill, age 26 years 6 months and 15 days, 53rd Regiment of the Illinois Infantry. Life in the Illinois prairie was hard for the pioneers who came to tame the vast lands, full of snakes, wolves, and coming to blows with natives who were being forced ever westward by the expansion of newcomers. The story of Alonzo Underhill is just one of countless sad deaths that came far too early. His dreams of growing old, and watching his grandsons and granddaughters work to build families, farm acres of corn and squash upon the fertile black earth that he had fought to plow and plant. I hope you like this story. Please press the little like thumb below the video screen if you enjoyed this very sad but true story from the past. Please subscribe to my channel if you would like to hear more true stories of life and death in America during its early years. I am trying hard to bring more stories like this to you as often as possible. Thank you for listening.